Welcome back to the Multifamily Man Show. I am your host, Angelo Webb. And today we're just gonna continue our series on fair housing. Big thing, obviously, because there's big consequences for those people who do break these laws. I actually have a person in our neighborhood who just won a case against a homeowner in our actual subdivision. They literally told them in an email that they couldn't rent from them because they had kids. That goes back to the last one, family status. So again, I know some of the stuff people might think like, who does that? It happens. It happens a lot, especially with private landlords and even some smaller apartment operators who just really don't know the laws and really don't know the rules. And again, most of it is completely unintentional. Some of the questions are genuine questions, getting to know people. Trying to find anybody tell you on sales. The best thing to do is to ask people questions, find something that you guys have in common, right? And once you have that you find that commonality, you build that rapport and you find what you have in common. Then you kind of build off of what you have in common because you've made a connection. No different when you're selling or renting apartments. But you just have to be very careful what you talk about. That's the only thing, because somebody can confuse it as being discriminatory. And even if they don't, you still might be breaking fair housing law. So you just have to be careful. And that's the whole point of this series, is just to make people aware that even with good intentions, you could be breaking the law and it can cost you thousands of dollars, if not your property. It can cost you your shirt, you know what I mean? So today's is going to be about national origin. And this is really a big thing because some people don't understand that you can't deny a person an apartment, or you cannot deny to rent to them, or you can't tell them they can't apply simply because they may not be U.S. citizens. This is huge. Especially in a place like Houston, where it seems that maybe 30% of the population aren't Native Americans, right? They're not from America. That's not their country of origin, national origin. We have people from all over the world here. Probably one of the most diverse cities in the world. So this is huge. People don't understand, or people don't know how to handle these situations. So national origin, by definition, for the fair housing, under the FHA, it's unlawful for a landlord, property manager, real estate agent, or property owner to treat someone different because of their national origin. National origin includes birthplace, ethnicity, ancestry, culture, and language. So a lot of times it's really going to be birthplace where we kind of think more national origin, but it's actually deeper than that. Someone's ethnicity, their ancestry, their culture, and language. So they could be a citizen but only speak Spanish. This would still fall under national origin, just under that tree. So birthplace, ethnicity, and ancestry. Like, national origin includes a region within a country or a region that spans multiple countries. The FHA may be violated even if a landlord does not know a person's particular national origin or is mistaken about a person's national origin. So what that means is, even if you make an assumption and you're correct or wrong, either way it goes, making that assumption and kind of bringing that up, you're violating fair housing. Again, because that can be construed as being discriminated against, whether you're making that. And again, some of this stuff goes both ways, right? You can't say you're Jewish, you can't say, well, I'm only going to rent to Jewish people. Yeah, you know what? That might work in their favor. So somebody comes in and you say, yeah, I'm going to rent to them because they're Jewish. You didn't necessarily hurt them by saying yes, but the fact that you're only doing it because they are is a problem, right? Because that means you're excluding everyone else. So that's something that you really have to be aware of. Language and accents, huge thing. Again, here in Houston, I know people could be watching this anywhere, but a place like Houston, if you've been to Houston or you live in Houston, you know that there's accents everywhere. There's people from all over the world, everywhere. There's no place you can go in Houston and not see people that don't look like you, right? It's a huge melting pot. So if you treat somebody differently because they have an accent or they speak a language other than English, same thing is enforcing policies based off of that. I'm sure you guys like who needs to know this? Like, who doesn't know that? Some people just do not know, or they do not care, and they need to be reminded. All right, so you can't tell an applicant. You can only fill out in English, or you can't tell them no speaking Arabic in the office. Like, you can't. You're violating for housing, right? One of the best practices is always have something digital. This is why I love to digitize your operations, because if somebody comes in and they speak Spanish, it's easy when they go that route to apply to have it in Spanish, right? It's easy to get your application, digitally in different languages, so people can apply. Okay, so another thing with languages and accents, kind of putting people that speak the same language all in one part of the property. Again, you say, "Oh, I'm gonna put all the people that speak Spanish only in Building B." You can't do that. Again, that's a type of steering. It is steering based off of what will fall under national origin. Some common violations that I think I've seen, just to make a few examples, just refusing to rent or sell or negotiate with the person because of that person's ethnicity, right? Now, people come in, might be from a certain country, that people may have had bad experiences with a person of that nationality, and now that former experience with an individual comes off against another person, and they want to not rent, not sell, not even talk to. That's a huge thing, right? Oh my God, they're always. Now, as soon as somebody make that remark, it's over, right? If the right person hears it, it's over. If you're a colleague and somebody makes that remark, remind them what that remark it means, how it affects everybody in the office, and how it affects other people. Another thing, charging additional rent, deposits, or fees because someone speaks another language or they're not a citizen. This is illegal, right? It happens. People say, all right, well, yeah, you have a student visa. Ain't no telling you can leave whenever you want. There's no repercussions. So we're going to charge them more. You can't do that. Your rent is your rent. You can't change the rent based off of somebody's nation of origin, or their citizenship, or the language that they speak. One big one is discouraging living at your property or your neighborhood and suggesting another property that has more people that look like them or speak the same language as them or the same culture as them. Now, if they ask, it's different. But to steer them there or suggest that they go somewhere else simply because because anything that falls under that national origin protected class, because that applies to them, again, that's a violation against fair housing. Refusing maintenance because of a person's, again, because of the nationality, immigration status, etc. You have some slumlords out there that will believe that people that are from a different place don't know the laws, don't know the rules. And in some cases, this is true. Just my personal opinion, this is true in a lot of cases when people come from different countries, especially if it's not Western countries. You have some people that come from Western countries, i.e. Canada, parts of Western Europe, and the things that we do already, we couldn't do there, right? So a lot of times when we get people from those countries, a lot of stuff in our leases are illegal in their countries. But if you have some people that come from other parts of the world, very, very common in like the Middle East, where they have a totally set of different rules in certain countries in regards to housing. And they think by conditioning that applies here. And they actually have a little bit more, they have more rights here in regards to housing for the most part. And this is, again, from my experience, that they'll think that that's okay, and they're really dealing with a slumlord doing things illegal. Or you have people who come from different parts of the world, come here and they invest, they own property, they start renting out property, but they're renting it out as if they still live where they're originally from. And again, some of these things might be common practice in their country, but not here, and it can get them in trouble to the point, again, where they can lose property easily. So those are some of the things that I see that are kind of common. One thing is another cultural thing for maintenance. There's some people in some cultures, they don't allow shoes in the house. So if you're going to a unit, whether you're inspecting it, whether it's maintenance or anybody from the office staff, if they ask, to ask you to remove your shoes, they're like, hey, we don't allow people to come in unless they take their shoes off. You have to honor that. I know that sounds crazy, but you have to honor that, right? And you can't tell them, hey, well, I'm coming anyway and I ain't taking off my shoes. Technically, right? You've just committed a fair housing issue. Say, well, if I got to come in with my shoes on, I'm not going to come in and do the work. Or if I can't leave my shoes on, then I'm not doing anything you need, right? And then there you go. You just refused it based off of something cultural, right? Now, the exceptions to every rule. If there's flooding, if the roof fell in, something crazy happened, and you have to have shoes on to protect your feet, that's a little bit different, and you can explain that. But any reasonable person would understand that as well. A few policies, a few things that could be policies, again, that could go against this. Requiring all household occupants to speak English. A big one here in Houston. Telling a person not to cook certain foods because of the smells. Can't do this. All right, you can't do that. You can't. Again, different cultures use different spices and cook different types of food. You can't tell them they can't cook things because of the smell in a common area, right? Well, it came through the wall. Or, now this hallway smells like this, or this stairwell smells like this. Guys, you can't tell them they can't cook. Is that a tough one? Yes. Have I lived in apartments before with people from different countries, and I walk in the building and it's like, oh, God, that's strong. Yes. However, we can't, as a person that was living in an apartment, I know what to expect, right? You have to understand that you're living with people. You're sharing some type of space with other people. So they have rights just like you. Hell, it might have been times when I cooked some chorizo and eggs, and they was like, "Yo, that doesn't smell good, right? Has a unique smell to it, right?" They may not like it, right? But hey, that's what I like to eat for breakfast. So it is what it is, right? And as property manager and property owners, we can't tell them they can't cook. So understand that going into certain units, when there's a move out and you're turning the unit, there may be strong smells. You may need to get air ducts cleaned. You may have to repaint. My advice is to get an ozone machine. Whatever company does like your carpet cleaning and take care of that stuff. A lot of them have ozone machines or O2 machines, and O2 machines will practically get rid of any smell. They seal it up. Usually it takes 48 hours, but it gets rid of anything that has basically anything organic it destroys. And there was a time where we had burn units, and anybody that's been in a fire unit knows how bad it smells. O2 machine took care of it in 48 hours. We've had units where people were smokers and lived in there for years. I'm talking about walls yellow smokers. Go in there, a lot of times clean out the vents, repaint or use Kills, which is a big thing. You can use Kills paint and it'll trap it in there, and then you can also use the O2 machine, or you can just go in there and use the O2 machine and it'll get rid of the smell. It's just they do amazing things. All right, but we can't tell people they can't cook certain foods. Again, forcing a person to choose an apartment near other people who speak the same language. If they request to be around maybe people that they know there already, that's different. They ask to be at a certain part of the property. You can oblige if you have something available there. Enforcing certain rules against someone, but not enforcing those rules against anyone else. Again, another thing, you can't if you're gonna bust balls about the rules, you have to do it to everybody, right? So the best practice is to be consistent. Don't get me wrong, there have been times where I gave people warnings and there wasn't consequences, but the rules are the rules. Make sure that you're enforcing them consistently, so no one can come and say, well, hey, they're showing favoritism towards these type of people, or people that look like this, or people that look like them, right? Anybody else they're being harsh on. Just make sure that you're consistent. We all have residents that we absolutely love, but we still have to remind them when they break a rule, like, hey, you're my, hey, I love you, but hey, y'all did this, got to treat it like anybody else would treat it. So I'm just doing my job, and you have to, most people understand that. Another thing is immigration status. Now, this can be kind of a difficult one, but regardless of a person's immigration status, they're still protected under fair housing. So HUD doesn't require or doesn't inquire about immigration status when investigating fair housing complaints, but it still falls under this. Landlords may ask for documentation and perform credit checks to determine whether an individual meets objective rental criteria. However, landlord must apply the same policies and procedures in a consistent manner to all potential tenants. It is unlawful for a landlord to ask a tenant questions about immigration status because of how the tenant looks, talks, or dresses. Requests for citizenship and immigration information may violate a Fair Housing Act. Now, this can be a big thing. And I'm going to be honest, even me being in the industry for a very long time, I made a mistake. I made this mistake for a few years before I was corrected. by one of the team members. She informed me like, hey, we can't not tell them that they can't apply because they don't have a social security number. And it was weird. And I had to do some digging and looking and talk with a compliance director from another company, actually, referred with just somebody else I knew in the industry. And there have been cases where people have been immigrants and they don't have social security numbers. And they have filed lawsuits for violations, for discrimination based off of that. And they won. So, again, this is one of those things that's touchy. Because for me, in my opinion, if we go, hey, you have to have a social security number. That's part of how we figure out who you are. That's how we determine your credit. And if your credit is not at a certain level, certain things happen. Well, here's the thing. If our requirement said your credit score has to be a 600 or above, that's different, right? Because if we don't know what your credit score is, we can't make a decision. Now, if we don't have a minimum credit score or a required credit score, but based off of your credit score, your deposit may be higher, we just have to give them the higher deposit. But we still have to apply, right? They still have the right to apply. So really what your property requirements are and how your standard operating procedures are, right? Because even some of them say, hey, you got to have a 600 or above. If they don't have a 600, they may not be denied, but they might have a higher deposit. If that's the case, you have to go with that. So it just has to be consistent. I know on RealPage, we usually just use all zeros or all nines. That's what we use when it asks for Social Security. And the big thing about that was this was a LIHTC property, so low income housing tax credit property, which is a HUD program. So, if you have a program like that, and folks are, bringing up lawsuits or making complaints with fair housing, it can get you in a lot of trouble. So keep that in mind. The last big thing I think I can hit on is harassment. That's what it is. Harassment. That's one thing that I have not talked about. So it's illegal to trick or coerce anybody, intimidate or threaten anybody based off of national origin. Okay? You can't threaten to call ICE on people. Okay? You can't threaten to evict people because of maybe a traditional culture, like the way they dress. And obviously making racial or ethnic or religious slurs towards people. So this stuff is all harassment. All right, so you can't harass people, period. You can't harass nobody. Harass, not just renting apartments or to your residents. You can't harass nobody, so don't harass the residents, right? And again, guys, if you hear about somebody doing this, or they are literally property owners, property managers, people in management that literally brag about doing some of this stuff. They brag about the lengths they go to get people to move and all kind of crazy shit. Do the right thing and be, make the decision to do the moral thing and let them know, all right, man, you can't do that, right? You know that that's a fair housing violation. If they bring that back, you're in trouble, and so is your company. So when you see these things, any of these things I'm talking about, if you see property owners or property managers or somebody comes to you and tell you this happened, if an individual tells you this, let them know what they need to do. they need to file a complaint immediately, a fair housing complaint. That's the only way we're going to stop it. Okay? Again, if you know owners doing it, if you know investors that own small properties, small apartment properties, let them know, like, yo, let's not do that, right? That's like kind of saying it as a joke, but it ain't cool because, hey, this is what can happen, right? And the more people we get letting them know, like, hey, it's not good, the less we're going to see it. Because the more it happens, listen, I'm not no anti-government dude. Don't get me wrong. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not, nothing against nobody who's like that. That's just really not me. But I'm a realist. The more people take advantage of people and do wrong by people, the more government intervention we get. And the more we tell the government, the more that the government tells us what to do and how to do it, it becomes a bigger issue for people in general. Usually there's more bureaucracy in it. There's more paperwork in it. So if people do the right thing, the government doesn't step in and force people to do the right thing, right? So if you see anybody committing fair housing acts, remind them, especially if it's somebody you know, remind them what they're doing. Again, if you know anyone who's experienced fair housing violations or discrimination or housing discrimination, period, let them know that they experienced that and they need to make a report, so people can be held responsible and people know, like, hey, I'm not going to, I can't keep doing this, right? Or people know in the future, like, hey, we need to watch what we're doing. We need to make sure we're doing everything the right way. So that wraps up national origin. Again, if you have any questions about this, I am always free and I'm available. You can email me at angelo@gettotalwealth.com. And thank you again for listening. And again, this is the Multifamily Man Show, powered by Total Wealth Academy. Thank you.